conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to those of you watching on television and listening on radio. I'm Alastair Stewart, and for the next 2 hours I'll be keeping you company with the stories that really matter across the country. From women racing drivers to a cheese grader, we have it all. We'll also be asking if it's time out or time up for Boris Johnson. But first, let's bring you right up to date with all the news. Here's Simon Pusey.
Thank you, Alistair. It's just gone 12 o'clock. I'm Simon Pusey in the GB newsroom. Police will meet a senior Conservative backbencher to discuss allegations of blackmail and intimidation. William Ragg has accused Downing Street of bullying and claims Tory whips have threatened to remove public funds from the constituencies of MPs trying to oust the Prime Minister. He'll speak to a Met detective next week, which means police could potentially open an investigation. A Number 10 spokesman says an inquiry will only be opened if there's evidence to support the claims.
What's happening is in itself quite alarming. I was elected in 1997 on an issue of integrity in public life. And I think the situation now is, if anything, worse than it was then. I think it is serious. And I also think that the Prime Minister is in an incredibly precarious situation. And I would expect more of those letters to be put in sometime next week.
The UK is taking steps to ease tensions between Russia and Ukraine. The Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, will head to Moscow to speak to his Russian counterpart after the UK's invitation to discuss security was accepted. It comes after Downing Street warned Russia would be punished if the country pushes ahead with any destabilising action. Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Tom Tugendhat told GB News by sending weapons to Ukraine, the UK was helping the country to defend itself.
Because I hope it will persuade Putin that this is a really daft idea. Because whatever he manages to do in the initial punch, and he's got the armour, he's got the men to invade, there's no question about that. But the occupation would be extremely difficult, as the Ukrainians would fight for their own country. So I hope very much what we're doing is we're dissuading Russia so that Putin doesn't make this daft decision.
US police say a British astrophysicist who was fatally shot in Georgia was killed by a stray bullet. Dr. Matthew Wilson, who was visiting family, was lying in bed when he was hit. The 31-year-old was found dead at 2 a.m. Police described the incident as a random act, saying his death appears to be the result of a gun's reckless discharge. The majority of Ireland's coronavirus restrictions have now been lifted. COVID passes are no longer required for entry to hospitality and entertainment venues, and live events can return to full capacity. The move also removes an 8 p.m. curfew on the hospitality sector. The country's Taoiseach Micheál Martin says today's a good day in Ireland's COVID journey.
We've done this by having the confidence to be ourselves. As we face into our second century as a free democracy, and as we navigate this new phase of COVID, it is time to be ourselves again.
Meanwhile, Irish police are investigating reports that a dead man was taken into a post office in an attempt to claim his pension. The incident allegedly happened in County Carlow. It's claimed his body was abandoned when a staff member asked about his well-being. The local mayor says the community is in shock. Police confirmed they're investigating the unexplained death of an elderly man. A new survey suggests that 1 in 3 drivers are unaware of changes to road rules. 33% of motorists said they didn't know the highway code is being revamped, including 4% who have no intention of looking at the details. The revised code, which is designed to protect cyclists and pedestrians, comes into force next week. High street pharmacists will now be able to refer obese people to a free online NHS weight loss programme. Previously, obese patients in England had to see their GP before they could access the 12-week plan. Those with either high blood pressure, diabetes or BMI over 30 are being encouraged to speak to their pharmacists. The Olympic cycling gold medalist Chris Boardman is to head up a new government agency called Active Travel England. It will be tasked with improving cycling and walking infrastructure across the country. The agency, which launched today, will manage the national active travel budget, awarding funding to projects that improves health and air quality. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Alastair Stewart and friends.
Simon, thanks very much. Welcome to both TV viewers and those listening to us on radio. The time is just past 12, and I'm Alastair Stewart, and this is Alastair Stewart and Friends. Coming up this afternoon, another eventful week at number 10. The MP Christian Wakeford defected from the Conservatives to Labour just minutes before PMQs on Wednesday. Senior Tory MP David Davis called for the Prime Minister to resign. Is Boris Johnson on the ropes after surviving a coup, or has he come back fighting? I really want to hear your thoughts. Is it time out or time up for the Prime Minister? We'll also be crossing over live to central London as NHS workers in their thousands march through the capital in protest against mandatory COVID-19 vaccinations for healthcare workers. I'll be joined in the studio this hour by rising star Kaj Kular, who works a 9-to-5 job in the office, but now she's on the cusp of competing in the 2021 GT Cup, a British sport car championship. If she gets through the Formula Woman competition, she will win a seat in a McLaren GT. Now, ahead of a big fight, boxers go to training camps. Ahead of an important chess match, the Grand Masters and others study previous form and remind themselves of the great game plans that others have succeeded with or fallen foul of. I see the Prime Minister a bit like that this weekend. On Wednesday afternoon at PMQs, the chamber was like a boxing ring. Boris Johnson toe-to-toe with his opponent Sir Keir Starmer in front of a hostile crowd. Dramatically, just before the bell rang for the first round, the PM discovered that his team member Christian Wakeford had switched camps. And in the final round, he was dealt a devastating blow from an old sparring partner. David Davis told him to his face, "For God's sake, go." Many thought the contest was over, but Boris Johnson picked himself up from the canvas and is evidently ready to go again. Far from tempting him to throw in the towel, it seems to fire him up. Well, early next week, he and we will hear what senior civil servant Sue Gray makes of it all. And there's a lot of it. But most agree that the key issues are the detail of what was known by whom and when, and who said what about it to whom. Whether a senior civil servant's warning to a principal private secretary about the advisability of one specific party was handed on to the Prime Minister or not is a key issue. Speculation, in all honesty, is futile. Patience is imperative. But there is a fascinating debate going on over just what Ms Gray will do. Will she simply assemble the facts, point at contradictions and/or illogicalities, but leave others to judge? Or will she be more conclusive on who erred and to what extent that broke the rules? For the Prime Minister, that's a vital distinction. Well, this weekend, I suspect that Boris Johnson will be doing a good deal of if she says this and if she says that stuff. But there's no point in trying to second-guess Sue Gray. Her report, or her take, as it were, is well worth considering, whatever it says. There's a great deal at stake. Whenever I mention this subject, however, on Twitter, I am greeted in roughly equal measure by those saying, "Lay off! He's the boss, he's our boss, and it's all got up by others. And those who say he's a wrong 'un, caught out who ought to go. I am genuinely neutral, but I'm equally intrigued. So much is at stake. Yesterday in the Daily Telegraph, Fraser Nelson, editor of the very critical Spectator magazine, argued that Boris Johnson should indeed get one last chance, but Fraser doubted that it would be delivered. Today, The Times has a big splash on the rallying of the troops around the Prime Minister to achieve just that. Elsewhere, there are calls for him to drop or postpone the April rise in national insurance and to big up the freedoms that dropping Plan B on COVID deliver. So clearly, the fight is on. One of the top figures in the campaign to defend the Prime Minister joins me in just a moment. We're still reeling from the attempted coup from within Tory ranks to bring matters to a head, even before Ms Gray has presented her report. The rebels' promises of a rapid delivery of 54 or even more letters seeking a vote of confidence in the Prime Minister came to nothing. It cost them dear in bitter dismissals from men and women with power and long memories. They countered, however, with charges of blackmail by the Tory party's enforcers, the whips, only to be batted out of the ground by cabinet-level voices. They retaliated by saying to the Met Police, blackmail is wrong. And William Ragg, the Tory chair of the Public Administration Committee, who led the way on those claims of blackmail, now says he's talking to the Metropolitan Police next week. But this is more than just the stuff of pork pies, school children behaviour and big beasts getting brutal. It's actually about our democracy, our trust in government and in Parliament. So perhaps it is time to take a brief pause before the end game unfolds. To that end, I've invited a leading supporter of the Prime Minister, mentioned in that Times newspaper piece, and a leading critic to join me to map out what might happen, what should happen, and crucially, what's at stake for the rest of us. The office of Prime Minister, our democracy, and our country. And on that and more, I'd really like to hear your thoughts as well. You can get in touch, GB Views at GB News, via Twitter, or all the rest of it. And I look forward to hearing from you. So, first up, I'm delighted to be joined by Conor Burns, Conservative Member of Parliament for Bournemouth West, Minister of State in the Northern Ireland office, and he's the guy I referred to, who's mentioned in the Times as a very close ally of the Prime Minister. Conor, good to see you. Time out or time up for the Prime Minister?
Well, good to see you too, Alistair. Listen, clearly it's been a tricky couple of weeks. The Prime Minister was very clear, not this week, the previous week, where he apologised for what happened in Downing Street, said that with the benefit of hindsight, he wishes he'd ordered everybody inside, and asked, I think not unreasonably, for space for Sue Gray to complete her report, to come forward with the facts around what happened and the context within which they happened. And then he has rightly and properly undertaken that he will come back to the House of Commons, make a statement and answer questions to MPs on that. But I think what you saw this week at Prime Minister's Question Time is that Boris is relishing the opportunity to implement the manifesto for which he got that incredibly personal mandate in 2019. He announced the end of pretty much all the pandemic restrictions. COVID is, in a sense, in the rearview mirror now, and we've got to get back to the priorities of delivering for the British people.
Absolutely. But one thing that strikes me about all of this is that many people, I mean, on my Twitter feed, but also in conversation, say the thing you've got to understand about Boris Johnson is he's a wrong 'un, but he's our wrong 'un. In the current climate, Conor, that's not good enough.
Well, look, I supported the Prime Minister. I was his parliamentary private secretary when he was Foreign Secretary. I left Theresa May's government on the same day that he did, and I was at his side during the leadership. And I believed, and I believe, that Boris is the right person to lead our country at this particular time in our national story. And it shouldn't therefore surprise you to know that the Prime Minister retains my full support. One of the wisest things David Cameron once said was, Twitter is not the British people. And I've been down here in my own constituency in Bournemouth over the last couple of days. I was doing constituency visits yesterday. And there was a plethora of things that people wanted to talk to me about. And they were across the range of things that government needs to do to deliver, to make the lives of the people of this country better, to make our country as a whole more prosperous, more secure and stronger in the wider world. And I still believe that Boris is the man to lead us through this time.
If heads have to roll, these are men and women that he appointed. If the Metropolitan Police are going to sit down and talk to RAG about whipping having gone wrong, that's on his watch as well. At some point, he's going to have to do more than just, look, I'm very, very sorry. He's going to have to take some responsibility as well.
Well, look, Will Wragg made some pretty incendiary and outrageous and very serious allegations. It is no secret that the government whips of all governments over decades have sought to persuade members of parliament who have concerns to back the government's legislative agenda. That's in the nature of how parliament works. But I can tell you, Alistair, based on my experience of 12 years now as a member of parliament, serving as a PPS in, I think, 5 different government departments, having pitched and persuaded and campaigned for resources to come to my own constituency for new schools, for coastal community funding to improve the peer approach area of my Bournemouth West constituency, that the processes that you go through to get these funds allocated to you are absolutely rigorous. They're applied impartially. Civil servants oversee them. So the idea for a second that the whips or anybody else in government would have the power or the ability to withhold funding from an individual's constituency when they made a legitimate case for need is just simply wrong.
So do you simply disbelieve the suggestion then from Christian Wakeford that he was told, back off and you'll get a school, don't back off, rebel, and you won't get a school? Is that simply not true?
Well, I believe the words of both my predecessor and my successor as International Trade Minister, who read out on one of your competitor news outlets the other day, the tweet exchanges between him and Christian Wakeford over the trade bill. And it was very clear there was no conditionality. There was no mention of school funding. So no, I do not, I'm afraid, accept the assertions that have been made in that quarter.
Final question. Lord Adonis said it, but didn't get quite as much traction. When Michael Heseltine, Lord Heseltine, says it, it's got huge traction. Have they let the cat out of the bag? If Boris goes, Brexit goes?
I think I retweeted or commented on Lord Adonis's tweet saying, you know, here's the real agenda. There are a lot of people in this country, Boris's political opponents, particularly on the European issue, who have never forgiven him as the sort of the liberal mayor of London figure who went out there and put himself at the head of the Leave campaign and in a sense gave decent people, honourable people, liberal people, internationalist people, globalist people, the right, the permission, the cover to vote for an independent United Kingdom by voting to leave the European Union. I think you're seeing, to some degree, it's not totally that, but to some degree, that constant fury at what Boris did over the Leave campaign, for which I personally and millions of others are deeply in his debt.
Conor Burns, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for your time this Saturday afternoon. Take care. Keep in touch.
Good to see you.
That was Conor Burns there, one of the Prime Minister's leading supporters and Minister of State for Northern Ireland. Joining me now for his take is Henry Hill, who's the news editor of Conservative Home, widely known by friends and foe alike as being one of the authoritative voices of what's really going on in the Conservative Party. Henry, great to see you. Time out or time up for the Prime Minister?
Oh, I mean, it's time up. Absolutely. It's a sense of when the rebels haven't managed to get their act together yet. I think it could potentially be a slow, drawn-out process, but it's almost impossible to see how Boris Johnson salvages his premiership at this point. I think the important thing to remember always is that whilst the individual cut and thrust, the up and down of each day is super engaging and, you know, keeps people like us who comment us about politics for a living engaged and amused, all these things always boil down to the fundamentals. Why did Tory MPs make Boris Johnson Prime Minister? Because he was a winner, because he had an ability to connect with voters who don't normally vote Conservative. Does he now look like a winner? No. His polling is personally terrible. He's a drag on the Conservative vote. And most importantly, in those red wall areas, those areas of the country that lent the Tories their vote in 2019 on account of the Prime Minister, we're now hearing from activists on the doorstep, local councillors, people campaigning for council by-elections and getting ready for the local elections, that it's having a devastating impact on the Conservative Party position in precisely those areas that he won. So no, I think all of that's going to be fed back to MPs, and sooner rather than later, hopefully, he will be on the way out.
You make an interesting distinction there in your analysis between people like us who talk about it, according to my Twitter feed, too much, people on the doorstep, party workers, and the ordinary Joe and Joanna public, as it were. And how damaging, in your view, is, forget how people are going to vote at the next election, because that's a moving feast, but that getting on for 80% of folk, as polled, say they've lost trust in him?
I mean, it's critically important, especially, we're very lucky, hopefully, that the country has properly turned a corner on COVID-19 now, and we're heading out of the era of restrictions. But remember the position of enormous trust that the government has demanded of us over the last 2 years, when it's put itself in this position to impose such extraordinary restrictions on our personal freedoms and liberties. That demand, trust in government, is the essential condition for making that work. So fundamentally, we're in a position where if God help us, the pandemic took a turn for the worse, it isn't obvious anymore that the Prime Minister has the moral authority to actually impose any measures on the nation. But also, just in general, from the Conservative Party's perspective and the nation's perspective, this constant distrust is corrosive. It's corrosive of actually our entire democratic process. If people are constantly cynical, if they do believe politicians are all the same and are in it for themselves. And I think one of the most tragic things about this is that actually Boris Johnson, I've never been his biggest fan, but I absolutely credit him with the 2019 general election. And the reason that he pulled that off is because he did genuinely have this ability to make people who felt they weren't being listened to by politicians, whether this was in the EU referendum or afterwards, they felt they had a connection. They felt, and he brought them into the political process. And I thought that was an incredibly good thing. And actually, I want to try and salvage that, because one of the worst outcomes of this would be if all those people who gave politics a chance because of Boris Johnson decided, because of Boris Johnson, that it had played them for fools.
Final point then, in that context, and focused very much on ordinary people, voters. They read in the newspapers, and they may get it over the next few days, more lifting of Plan B type restrictions on COVID, a return of freedoms, go out there and do your own thing. Plus, come April, you might just not face an increase in national insurance, and you might not be paying a little bit more tax. They're going to put a lot of what you've said behind them and think, I'll have some of that.
I mean, they might, and that will certainly be the Prime Minister's hope. But last weekend, I was actually up in part of the Red Wall, and I was talking to councillors who owed their positions to the political revolution that Boris Johnson had driven. I was up in Rotherham, where the Conservatives went from 0 to 20 councillors in one election because of that amazing redrawing of the political map that Boris Johnson personally pulled off. And it's not really my view that I'm giving you so much as like the feedback they were getting from their voters on the doorstep. So I do think this has actually cut through.
All right. Henry Hill, thank you very much indeed for joining us. That's Henry Hill, the news editor of Conservative Home. As I said, it's a talk shop partly amongst Conservative people, but it is well read by an awful lot of people. Henry, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed for your time this Saturday afternoon. And we're going to be continuing this conversation about Boris Johnson throughout the show today. I hope you accept that was a fair start. Someone who is totally, absolutely pro the Prime Minister, and somebody who clearly says not his own view, but what he senses in the country and amongst party workers, who thinks it is time for him to go. So my question is it time out or is it time up for Boris Johnson? Later on in the programme, you'll be hearing what my thoughts are on the issue, but I really want to hear what you think. You've started already, and it's red hot. So email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk or get in touch on Twitter. We're also on Instagram and we are on Facebook, and we really genuinely want to hear what you have to say. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends, and we've lots more coming up on the programme this afternoon. It's my absolute pleasure to be talking about cheese. It was National Cheese Lovers Day this week, and we'll be giving it the respect that I think it deserves right after the weather.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking mostly dry, although there will be some patchy rain across western and northern Scotland. Let's take a look at the details. Zooming into the southwest, and although it will be dry, there will be a good deal of cloud around this afternoon. Best of the brightness will be across Dorset and Somerset. Moving east towards the southeast England and East Anglia, again it will be dry, but with plenty of cloud around. The cloud will thin, especially across East Anglia. There could be the odd spot of drizzle across northwest Wales. Otherwise, the rest of Wales and the Midlands will be dry with a few sunny spells. Northwest England will also be rather cloudy today, with the best of any sunshine across Cumbria and Lancashire. Most will be dry, but some drizzle is possible perhaps across the Pennines. Temperatures will reach 8 degrees Celsius. Moving across the Pennines, and it should be much brighter across northeast England, with more in the way of sunshine. In the sunshine and light winds, temperatures will reach 10 degrees Celsius. Into Scotland, and for many it will be cloudy with some rain, especially in the north and west. It will be breezy across northern areas, but milder with highs of 11 Celsius. Northern Ireland will see a mix of cloud and sunny spells, with perhaps the odd spot of drizzle across the higher ground. Highs here will reach 9 or 10 Celsius. Heading into this evening, and we see little change with the rather cloudy but largely dry weather continuing, and that is the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Join me, Nana Akua, on Fridays, Saturdays and Sunday afternoons here on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as my panel and I take on some of the top stories hitting the headlines.
You can look up the statistics.
No, you look it up. I hug everyone we learn from it and try and move on. That's it. Opinion is at the heart of the show. It's a place for open and frank conversation, but without the fear of cancellation. So join me here on GB News on Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoons between 4 and 6 p.m.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 27 minutes past 12 and you're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends here on GB News. Now, this week marked National Cheese Lovers Day. Thursday, the 20th of January, is a day for everyone to celebrate all that they love about this glorious, magnificent food. We have a huge cheese-making sector here in the UK, and we can enjoy over 700 named British cheeses. It's also a thriving sector and it's an important contributor to our economy. So I'm delighted to be joined now by Mark Pitts-Tucker, who is the head cheese grader at Davidstow Cheddar. And it's a real pleasure to talk to you. I've got a little plate of some of your fine products here in front of me, which I will attempt not to be over-distracted by. But tell me this, I'm a fan. Why does cheese need a national day? It is a faultless food.
I guess it's just bringing it to consumers' minds again, front of mind, Alistair. A lot of people would buy cheese for cheese balls at Christmas time, and maybe going into the new year, it's forgotten a little bit. So I think 20th of January is maybe just that gentle prompt that a day without cheese really is like a hug without a squeeze.
But the other thing which I do think is worth pointing out is that it's a food that satisfies gourmets, as it were, but also people who just want a quick sarnie. So, I mean, I've got, for example, this magnificent creature, which is all covered in wax, which is a very popular way of doing it, and basically bog standard cheddar. I mean, the extraordinary thing is it ticks all of the boxes.
It does. I think as long as you've got a piece of cheese in the fridge, you've got a potential meal at hand. And the Davidstow cheddar is matured that bit longer. Yes, we've got some fantastic cheese throughout the retail sector that's available for everyone to buy. And we're very fortunate that we supply Michelin star chefs as well. So we tick a lot of boxes.
So tell me what you actually do then as a cheese grader.
Well, some people get the grader and the grater mixed up. They think I actually grate cheese all day, but actually, Alistair, this is the tool of the trade. It's the cheese iron, and I actually do get paid to taste cheese. And in a typical week, with myself and my colleague, I could be tasting between 500 and 700 samples of cheese. So we're assessing it for body, texture, and flavour, the keeping quality, and ultimately picking off the cheese at its very best, ready for packing.
When wine experts do their equivalent of that, they famously sniff it, gurgle it round, but then they spit it out. Do you actually eat it?
I do eat a fair bit, probably far too much, I must admit. My bone structure's fantastic. My cholesterol has a bit to be desired. But yes, I mean, I do eat too much. I absolutely love cheese, and I would be eating it every day, whether I'm grading cheese or not. So the smelling of the cheese, the aroma, the volatiles that come off is a very important part of the assessment. As I say, the firmness and the keeping quality is also an integral part of it. But it's great to taste fantastic quality cheese. And this Cornish cheddar is just a delight.
Yeah. Let me take you back, as it were, to the beginning of the process, and that is the milk. How important is your relationship then as a master cheese person with the dairy farmer who's got beautiful cattle munching the grass, producing the milk, and then you suddenly turn it into these marvellous foodstuffs, which I will now, while you answer the question, sample?
It's an absolutely integral part of it, Alistair. Strong relationship with the farming base is imperative. We have all of our milk that goes into the Davidstow cheddar is from Cornish farmers. 98% of the ingredients that go into the cheese vat is indeed the milk. So you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, to mix up my metaphors a little bit, but actually high quality milk leads to high quality cheese. So paying a very fair price and having sustainable relationships in place is absolutely the cornerstone of our business.
Great to hear that, and I couldn't agree with you more. That was not one of those interviews, Mark, where I kind of tried to destroy your arguments because I put my hand up at the beginning. I agree with you. It's a magnificent food, and it's a crucial bit of our rural life and our industry. So power to your elbow, and thank you for finding time for us this Saturday afternoon.
You're very welcome.
That's
Thanks
Mark
so much for your time.
Fitzpatrick, who is the head cheese grader, not grater, as one or two of you jokingly pointed out on my Twitter feed as well. He's the head cheese grader at Davidstow Cheddar. And you're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends. We've plenty more still to come this afternoon, including our Rising Star segment. I'll be delighted to be speaking to an office worker who's in touching distance of being a big player in the world of motorsport. But before that, let's bring you right up to date with the latest news headlines. Here again is Simon Pusey.
Thanks, Alistair. It's 12:32. I'm Simon Pusey in the GB newsroom. Police will meet a senior Conservative backbencher to discuss allegations of blackmail and intimidation. William Bragg has accused Downing Street of bullying and claims Tory whips have threatened to remove public funds from the constituencies of MPs trying to oust the Prime Minister. He'll speak to a Met detective next week, which means police could potentially open an investigation. The UK is taking steps to ease tensions between Russia and Ukraine. The Defence Secretary Ben Wallace will head to Moscow to speak to his Russian counterpart after the UK's invitation to discuss security was accepted. It comes after Downing Street warned Russia would be punished if the country pushes ahead with any destabilising action. US police say a British astrophysicist who was fatally shot in Georgia was killed by a stray bullet last Sunday. Dr. Matthew Wilson, who was visiting family, was lying in bed when he was hit. Police say his death appears to be the result of a gun's reckless discharge. The majority of Ireland's coronavirus restrictions have now been lifted. COVID passes are no longer required for entry to hospitality and entertainment venues, and live events can return to full capacity. At 8 p.m, curfew on the hospitality sector has also been removed. TV, online and DAB plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Alastair Stewart and friends.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m, Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 36 minutes past 12, sort of 25 to 1 kind of thing. And you're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends here on GB News. And I hope some of you are listening as well on GB News Radio. Now, time for our rising star. Have you heard of Formula Woman? It's a competition to encourage women to get into motorsport. And more than 800 around the world entered to be in with a chance to race in the prestigious GT Championships as they look for the next female motor racing champion. Well, my next guest has been named in the top 50 contenders to win a seat in the televised GT Championships of 2022. And even more than that, an opportunity to drive a McLaren GT. So, delighted to be joined in the studio now by Raj Kula, who is a Formula Woman finalist. So exciting.
So exciting.
Tell me about Formula Woman and whether or not it's a route to going into the sport professionally or a route for very gifted, albeit amateurs.
I would say both, Alistair. Yeah. So the competition came about in 2004. And it's now coming back again after all of those years. So it's open to women over the age of 17 with a driving licence, essentially. So amateurs, ideally those without a racing licence, because it is about giving the opportunity to those women who haven't been in the sport before.
And fans of the sport, which include me and obviously you, will know about David Coulthard's W Series, which Lewis Hamilton also supports. It's different from that because it's not specifically to get women into F1, it's to get women into motorsport more generally and GT cars.
Correct, absolutely, yes. So as mentioned, it's open to those ideally with little to no racing experience, which I think is really, really exciting.
So you were a karter when you were a little bit younger, and you were telling my team that you kind of very happy to be described as an office worker, someone who had a secret passion.
Yes, well, actually, I got into karting not too fairly recently.
Oh, I thought it was when you were younger.
No. So I would play, car racing games on my PlayStation, and I was a car fan, let's say. But the sport itself, karting, I only got into in early 2020. So it's been a steep learning curve, a steep journey, but completely addictive, of course, as motorsport.
I mean, it is an interesting connection, isn't it? Because again, going back to the biggies in F1. Predominantly, almost exclusively men, unfortunately, at the moment, but women too. They start off in karting, but when they're 5, 6, 7 years old, and that then transitions to F1 cars, the difference between a kart and an F1 car is enormous. But I'm guessing the difference between a kart and a GT car is a little bit closer.
Yeah, correct. I mean, you get, the things like oversteer, understeer. You've got to learn how to drive in the wet and the dry. So the fundamentals of racing is what you pick up in karting. And I think, the steering in karting is very positive. It's very reactive to how you drive the vehicle. So if you can handle that, then hopefully you've got what it takes to step up into the GT car.
Yeah. Now, sitting in front of me, a moment ago, I had cheese. And this, I'm delighted to say, is as interesting to me as the cheese was, because there it is, and here is Raj's name, and the Union flag, which is quite excellent. But I've got a little hint here about the design, because it kind of rings a bell, given my age.
Yes, it's a tribute, kind of replica helmet of Nigel Mansell's World Championship helmet from 1992. So I love the design, and Nigel's an inspiration for myself. So when I got into karting, I researched British F1 drivers, and Nigel really stood out to me. I mean, we've got some similarities. He was born in the Midlands, as was I. He started out in karting. And we've got similar driving styles. He was known for his, kind of no bullying, kind of, he won't take it from anybody, elbows out type style of driving. And that's fairly similar to myself. So, I use it as a reminder and inspiration to kind of aim for the top, really.
Yeah. And the other thing, I jokingly said to you during the break, there are a couple of brand names on there which we don't bang on about because we're a commercial television and radio station as well. But it is a very expensive hobby pastime.
It is. I've read myself that, just karting alone, the average professional racing driver could spend 1 million just on the karting. And then by the time you've got to F3, let's say, you could have spent 3 million. So it's extremely expensive. But again, that's why Formula Woman is so welcomed, because actually you pay a very minimal entry fee, and then you've got the shot at something like a GT Cup.
But also, I mean, presumably these people aren't stupid out there. And it was Bernie Ecclestone himself who said once women do well enough to get really big sponsors, then women will get into F1. If you make it into the top 4, maybe even the winning place, top of the podium, and you want to keep going with it, which is more than possible, I presume that the sponsors would flood in.
You would hope so. But I think...
Any hints of that? Are you in talks with
anybody? No, not as yet, no. I think, it's a competitive space, Alistair. So, when you think about F1, the amount of seats within it, it's a hard competition. So,
and do the organisers of the competition give you any help in that respect if they suddenly say, blimey, Raj is a bit of a good talent here, let's get her more into GT racing?
It's more about guidance, so how to reach out to sponsors, how to kind of put your portfolio together, but ultimately, it's down to you making that connection with the sponsor, because hopefully if you get someone on board earlier in your career, they'll stick with you for the rest.
We talk mainly, but obviously because of what you do and what your passion is about women behind the wheel, but it's always struck me as being intriguing that when it comes to the commentators on the sport, whether it's television or radio, and also some of the journalists as well, the ex-male drivers are very, very good. David Coulthard himself is utterly brilliant, and Mark Blundell and people like that. But the best, in my view, are women. So you've got Jenny Gow on BBC Radio 5 Live, Lee Mackenzie, Channel 4 and what have you. They're head and shoulders amongst quite a lot of the blokes.
Yeah, and in my opinion, it shouldn't really matter, whether you're a woman or a man. I think, the more women that enter the sport, the more inspirational it's going to be for young girls coming up. But I think absolutely, the more they hear women representing the sport, talking and commentating and obviously being on the podium, hopefully is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you in terms of the sexism element of it, but I've had it explained to me that one of the fundamental differences is purely physical. It's about core physical strength. And if you're driving a motor car at, over 150 miles an hour, the G-forces when you corner and the rest of it, it does take a certain amount of physical strength that may not naturally come to most women, some of course, but does come more naturally to men. Is that a distinction that you accept?
I mean, the physical aspects absolutely are there, and the challenges. So you could say that men are, potentially naturally more, built for the sport, let's say. But there's absolutely no reason why, a woman couldn't make it to the top of the game. You think about, rally racing, Michelle, for example, back in the 80s. That was a very tough, car that she was driving, for example, and she nearly got the world championship. And then you've got, Jamie Chadwick now making a name for herself.
Brilliant. She's in the Coulthard W Series.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you've got, Danica Patrick in the US as well, who was the first woman to win, an IndyCar race. So I think women can do it. It's just the fact that not enough are entering at a younger age.
We've only just met, and I've grown to like you already, but please do me a favour and promise me that whatever else you do with your motor racing sport habit, do not go into Indy, because I'm utterly convinced that Indianapolis 500 and that whole series is completely and utterly bonkers. Round a loop, round quicker until somebody flies off. I mean, do you enjoy watching it?
I don't watch it so much, but I have actually done a stock car race in an oval setup before, just the one time. And it was tough, but I actually did win it. So it was an amateur race. But,
wow, brilliant.
Yeah.
Two very quick ones.
Sure.
When do you know if you make the top four?
Early March. So the second and third will be the 50 coming together. That will reduce to 10. So the 10th and 11th will be the ultimate final.
And secondly, do you have to come in the top four to want to carry on with your sporting enthusiasm, or even if you come 5 or 6, will we be seeing more of Raj?
Absolutely. I mean, worst case scenario, Formula Women plan to do future competitions, Alistair. So this won't be the end of it. It's just
brilliant. Well, I mean, as I hope I made clear, as folk who've been kind enough to watch this programme before know, I do genuinely love motorsport, and I love the idea that more women are getting into it. And we wish you all the very, very best.
Thank you.
It's luck, yes, but it's also real skill. And very proud of you, and thanks for finding time to come and talk to us, and make me one final promise, and that is that you'll come back and talk to us, whatever way it goes, come March, April.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Raj Kulhar there, thank you very much indeed. And I promise not to nick the crash helmet, because she'll need it when she's competing. Our rising star, Raj Kulhar there, who is a Formula Woman finalist, and we wish her well. Now, this afternoon, we also want to know your thoughts on whether it is time out or time up for Boris Johnson. We've got a lot already, so rather than waiting until the final hour, we thought we'd get some of them out there right now. Tom's got in touch via Twitter to say, if we have to reject the evidence of our eyes and wait for Sue Gray's report, then I suspect it will be a whitewash absolving Johnson. I'm sure the MPs will all then be able to go back to their constituencies and tell them to rest easy. Tyler has got in touch to say, all of this is distracting from government business and taking time in the Commons. Meanwhile, the cost of living crisis and myriad other problems are just not being dealt with. Tory MPs should expedite the inevitable, get 1922 letters sent in immediately and get this over with. Sarah's got in touch, and so the team which is supposed to be focused on its actual job of running the country, protecting its people and growing the economy is instead focused exclusively on protecting Boris Johnson. Bravo! More of that to come. And do keep them coming in. Gives you a sense of what you're up against. Pretty quality stuff. Now, the North Yorkshire Moors Railway is one of Yorkshire's best-known tourism attractions, with more than 100 full-time staff, 550 volunteers and 50 seasonal workers. The scenic railway stretches for miles through the North York Moor National Park, past idyllically preserved stations which you may recognise from blockbuster films such as Harry Potter and Indiana Jones. But due to the pandemic, the charity struggled to survive, which led to the launch of fundraising campaigns and national appeals. Our Yorkshire and Humber reporter Anna Riley reports now on how the famous tourist destination has rewritten its future after grappling with the virus for almost 2 years.
The North Yorkshire Moors Railway is the UK's largest preserved heritage railway. carrying more than 300,000 passengers each year and injecting an estimated 45 million into the county's economy. Born from a railway preservation society, the not-for-profit organisation is run and maintained by a dedicated network of volunteers and staff who plan and maintain the train service and its 18-mile infrastructure. But despite its vintage, it nearly fell into ruin as a result of the multiple lockdowns imposed by the pandemic.
We had a tough time during the pandemic. There was one period where we had a £4 million hole in our finances, and we genuinely didn't know what was going to happen. And thankfully, things like the furlough scheme came along. We also got money from the Arts Council and places like that. So fundamentally, it came together in the end, but it was a very difficult and stressful period for us all. We've had to look at ourselves as a business. It's time for us to look at actually what we do for public benefit, not just for our own benefit and not for the benefit of just the people travelling on us, but for the wider public benefit. And look at the fact that we are a charity. We've been a charity since 1974, and make sure that we actually are relevant to people and society.
The popular tourist destination could become one of the last places in Britain to burn lump coal, and this may mean more of a focus on education at the railway for a coming generation that may never lay eyes on coal outside of a museum.
What we're hoping to be is the place that burns coal, to explain why Britain burnt coal, why the world burnt coal, so that it is a relevance. It is seen as something that teaches us about the past, and actually that whilst coal is acknowledged to be something that definitely is environmentally damaging, and there's no getting away from that, that's a fact, we can't change that, but fundamentally it still was the building block of our industrial past and to a certain extent the industrial future of the world. You know, it was the foundation, it was the power that built everything, and we're a graphic interpretation of that. And that is still something that's important. It's still important that we remember why we burnt coal. We can't forget that. So if we burn a relatively small amount and we're still able to educate people, I still think we have a place in the world going forward.
So for a thriving future of the North York Moors Railway, it's set to be far more charitable than businesslike in its objectives, with a focus on its people and a recognition of its purpose in education and preserving an important piece of British history. Anna Riley, GB News, Gromont.
Love that piece, and I love the message in it as well. Great railways like that up and down the country, all worthy of support. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends. We've lots more coming up on today's programme. More than 70,000 people are expected to take part in a rally campaigning against making COVID jabs compulsory for NHS workers. But first, let's bring up to date with the weather.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking mostly dry, although there will be some patchy rain across western and northern Scotland. Let's take a look at the details. Zooming into the southwest, and although it will be dry, there will be a good deal of cloud around this afternoon. Best of the brightness will be across Dorset and Somerset. Moving east towards the southeast England and East Anglia, again it will be dry, but with plenty of cloud around. The cloud will then thin, especially across East Anglia. There could be the odd spot of drizzle across northwest Wales. Otherwise, the rest of Wales and the Midlands will be dry with a few sunny spells. Northwest England will also be rather cloudy today, with the best of any sunshine across Cumbria and Lancashire. Most will be dry, but some drizzle is possible perhaps across the Pennines. Temperatures will reach 8 degrees Celsius. Moving across the Pennines, and it should be much brighter across northeast England, with more in the way of sunshine. In the sunshine and light winds, temperatures will reach 10 degrees Celsius. Into Scotland, and for many it will be cloudy with some rain, especially in the north and west. It will be breezy across northern areas, but milder with highs of 11 Celsius. Northern Ireland will see a mix of cloud and sunny spells, with perhaps the odd spot of drizzle across the higher ground. Highs here will reach 9 or 10 Celsius. Heading into this evening, and we see little change, with the rather cloudy but largely dry weather continuing, and that is the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 5 to 1. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends on GB News, television and radio. Right now, about 75,000 healthcare workers march across London in their trademark blue uniforms to fight for freedoms against vaccine mandates, health passes, masks and ongoing testing. It's a worldwide rallies ranging from Canada to Australia, and 13 major cities across the UK, including London, and Liverpool and Leeds are taking part. With trending hashtags reading, "I will not comply," it does seem like pretty serious stuff. And we can cross over now to what I'm told is a pretty noisy rally, and join there Dr. Tony Hinton. Tony's a retired NHS surgeon, and we've spoken before about this. Before we come to the politics and the science of it, what's the atmosphere there like, Tony?
It's pretty noisy, it's very positive, and I'm here to support my NHS colleagues, many of whom may be fired soon, even though they worked with no vaccines and no proper PPE throughout the early days of this pandemic, Alistair.
Sure. Now, as I say, we've talked about this before, and you've been on other GB News programmes. Remind people why you think, as a retired surgeon, it is right and proper that people who do not wish to go through the whole vaccination process should still be able to work with vulnerable people, because that's a genuine concern amongst many members of the public.
I would say, Alistair, members of the public should have no concerns about being looked after by a doctor or a nurse that is unvaccinated. Many of those staff are already immune from having caught COVID. There is, in fact, a very interesting study has just come out this week from Israel, looking at medical staff that had received a 4th dose of this vaccine. And remember, this vaccine was made for the original variant, not for this variant. And that study showed those 4th jabs people were still catching Omicron. I would say actually Omicron now is very much like influenza, or perhaps even more like a common cold. Omicron is probably the only vaccination we need. I would have no reservation about being looked after by any NHS staff, whether they're vaccinated or whether they're not.
I know you follow these things very carefully, and it was only a few days ago when Boris Johnson was talking about lifting Plan B restrictions, that the Health and Social Care Secretary, Sajid Javid, also hinted that this mandate may be lifted anyway. Is that your understanding, that you may get between now and April only to find that what you are demanding doesn't happen?
I think this vaccine mandate policy will be dropped. Remember, it only applies for some strange reason to England. It doesn't apply in Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland. Is the virus somehow different in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland? It makes absolutely no medical sense. My fear is, though, is that these NHS staff that have worked so hard and put themselves at risk initially are now so fed up with the way that they've been treated, is that even when this mandate is rescinded, I fear many will leave anyway.
I mentioned, Tony, in the introduction to this conversation, that it wasn't only vaccine, it's all impositions, including masks. Is that, again, because you never thought that was a good idea in the first place, or is it because, as you've just articulated, we've now got to a point with the pandemic where maybe it's an epidemic and therefore a general relaxation is medically wise?
Well, Alistair, as a doctor, I always try to do what I think the government has failed to do, which is to follow the science. They always say they follow the science, but actually they don't. What they do is they make the science fit with what the policy is. So if we look at masks, there's only ever been one large-scale randomised controlled study of masks in Denmark. 3,000 patients in each group. And what it showed was it made no difference whatsoever. Your average face cloth mask has holes in it that are 5,000 times larger than the size of a virus particle. How can it do anything? They make no difference. What they do is they spread fear, they spread bacterial infections, and the sooner they're got rid of completely, the better.
Tony Hinton, good to talk to you, and thank you for joining us, and wish you well there. It's Tony Hinton, retired NHS surgeon, with his views on that demonstration. The time has just slipped past 1 o'clock, but before we go to the break, we also got in touch with the Department of Health and Social Care, partly because I was going to ask Tony Hinton that question about whether they thought it would still go ahead or not. And this is what the department said, and I quote, "Health and social care workers look after the most vulnerable people in society who could face serious health consequences if exposed to the virus. Ensuring staff are vaccinated is the right thing to do to protect patients and those in care. The vast majority of NHS staff have had the vaccine, which is our best defence against COVID-19. So there you have both sides of the argument. We like that. We like to air both of them. You're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends here on GB News, television and radio. Plenty more right after this. And hello and welcome back if you've been kind enough to be with us since midday, or hello, welcome if you've just joined us. I'm Alastair Stewart, and for the next hour on television and radio, I'll be keeping you company with the stories that really matter across the country. But first, let's bring you right up to date as well with all of the news. Here's Simon Pusey.
Good afternoon, it's just past 1 o'clock. I'm Simon Pusey in the GB newsroom. Police will meet a senior Conservative backbencher to discuss allegations of blackmail and intimidation. William Ragg has accused Downing Street of bullying and claims Tory whips have threatened to remove public funds from the constituencies of MPs trying to oust the Prime Minister. He'll speak to a Met detective next week, which means police could potentially open an investigation. A Number 10 spokesman says an inquiry will only be opened if there's evidence to support the claims.
What's happening is in itself quite alarming. I was elected in 1997 on an issue of integrity in public life. And I think the situation now is, if anything, worse than it was then. I think it is serious. And I also think that the Prime Minister is in an incredibly precarious situation. And I would expect more of those letters to be put in sometime next week.
The UK is taking steps to ease tensions between Russia and Ukraine. The Defence Secretary Ben Wallace will head to Moscow to speak to his Russian counterpart after the UK's invitation to discuss security was accepted. It comes after Downing Street warned Russia would be punished if the country pushes ahead with any destabilising action. Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Tom Tugendhat told GB News by sending weapons to Ukraine, the UK is helping the country to defend itself.
Because I hope it will persuade Putin that this is a really daft idea. Because whatever he manages to do in the initial punch, and he's got the armour, he's got the men to invade, there's no question about that. But the occupation would be extremely difficult, as the Ukrainians would fight for their own country. So I hope very much what we're doing is we're dissuading Russia so that Putin doesn't make this daft decision.
US police say a British astrophysicist who was fatally shot in Georgia was killed by a stray bullet. Dr. Matthew Wilson, who was visiting family, was lying in bed when he was hit. The 31-year-old was found dead at 2 a.m. last Sunday. Police described the incident as a random act, saying his death appears to be the result of a gun's reckless discharge. The majority of Ireland's coronavirus restrictions have now been lifted. COVID passes are no longer to be required for entry to hospitality and entertainment venues, and live events can return to full capacity. An 8 p.m. curfew on the hospitality sector has also been removed. The country's Taoiseach Micheál Martin says today is a good day in Ireland's COVID journey.
We've done this by having the confidence to be ourselves. As we face into our second century as a free democracy, and as we navigate this new phase of COVID, it is time to be ourselves again.
Irish police are investigating reports that a dead man was taken into a post office in an attempt to claim his pension. The incident allegedly happened in County Carlow. It's claimed his body was abandoned when a staff member asked about his well-being. The local mayor says the community is in shock. Police confirmed they're investigating the unexplained death of an elderly man. High street pharmacists will now be able to refer obese people to a free online NHS weight loss programme. Previously, obese patients in England had to see their GP before they could access the 12-week plan. Those with either high blood pressure, diabetes or a BMI of over 30 are being encouraged to speak to their pharmacists. A new survey suggests that 1 in 3 drivers are unaware of changes to road rules. 33% of motorists said they didn't know the highway code is being revamped, including 4% who have no intention of looking at the details. The revised code, which is designed to protect cyclists and pedestrians, comes into force next week. And the Olympic cycling gold medalist Chris Boardman is to head up a new government agency called Active Travel England. It will be tasked with improving cycling and walking infrastructure across the country. The agency, which launched today, will manage the national active travel budget, awarding funding to projects that improve health and air quality. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now let's get back to Alastair Stewart and friends.
Simon, thanks very much indeed. I am Alastair Stewart, and until 2 o'clock, I'll be keeping you company along with friends and friendly guests. Still to come, before 2 o'clock, you'll be hearing my take on our main discussion today. Is it time out or time up for the Prime Minister? Has he seen off the coup and survived, or is he still on the ropes? We'll be speaking to a friend of mine who is truly exceptional. Tom Yendle was born without any arms or hands. He's learned to do everyday tasks using his feet. He excels at painting with his mouth and feet. And we'll be talking to him about his work just before 1:30. Pharmacists in England can now refer customers who are concerned about being overweight to a free online NHS service to help them get in shape. It's hoped to help the estimated 1 in 4 adults who are obese. But with many of us putting on weight during the lockdown, we'll also be looking at the healthy habits that we continue with after it as we head further into 2022. Now, GB News is all about you, our viewers. Any burning questions or stories that you think we need to cover, no matter how big or small they may appear, we genuinely want to hear them. Get your voice heard by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk, and do please put Alastair Stewart in the subject line. This afternoon, I want to know your thoughts on whether it's time out or time up for Boris Johnson. It seems like he survived that failed coup that took place earlier on in the week. And yesterday, the Daily Telegraph's Fraser Nelson, editor also of the very critical Spectator magazine, argued that Boris Johnson should get one last chance. But Fraser doubted that it would be delivered. Well, today, the Times newspaper has a big splash on the rallying of the troops around the Prime Minister to achieve just that. Elsewhere, there are calls for him to drop or perhaps postpone the April rise in national insurance and to big up the freedoms that dropping Plan B on COVID are delivering. So, clearly, the fight is on. And as I said, we really want to hear what your thoughts are on the subject. We've had several already, and we will give some more of those a little later on in the programme. And and also my take on it. But I'm delighted to say that I'm joined now by Nigel Nelson, who is the political editor of the Sunday Mirror and the Sunday People. Nigel, great to see you. We've talked about this a couple of times before on other programmes as well. In your view, is it time out or time up for the Prime Minister?
I think that this week is going to be absolutely crucial, and I'm not sure he might survive the week. What MPs are really waiting for is Sue Gray's report. As you just pointed out, that the pork pie plot fizzled out last week, and in fact the defection of Christian Wakeford over to Labour only served to unify wavering Tory MPs. So so last week, if you like, he sort of got away with it. I think it really depends on the detail that is in Sue Gray's report, whether he survives next week. And even if he does, I do think that the premiership of Boris Johnson is about to come to an end. The question is whether or not that you wait for the next gaffe he makes, or whether what Sue Gray says will be enough to topple him.
It's interesting, isn't it, though, to see the nature and quality of the fight back, in the sense that the papers have clearly been very well briefed, with John Redwood whispering in his shell-like ear, drop the national insurance rise, others saying big up Plan B, the leadership team from way back being bought in, including Conor Burns, who I was talking to at the beginning of the programme. I mean, if they are on the way out, they're not showing any signs of it.
No, I mean, certainly they're fighting a very spirited rearguard action, which is what you would expect to happen. I watched Conor Burns in action in the House of Commons last week, and he was glad-handing an awful lot of MPs over in Portcullis House. But that doesn't mean that Boris Johnson will survive. The key thing is still those 54 letters going in of no confidence. And after that, which is why the pork pie plot failed, after that you've got to get the majority of Tory MPs to actually pass the vote of no confidence in him. Then he's gone. But the people who were behind the pork pie plot, who were the new intake from 2019, a bit overexcitable, they peaked rather too early, and as a result, that fizzled out. Older hands in the House of Commons were saying, look, stay your hand. If you put in your letters now and we get to the 54, we will end up having the vote before Sue Gray is reported, and the chances are Boris Johnson would have survived that.
Do you think the whipping allegations take it to a slightly different level? I mean, you and I know perfectly well that all of last week, the great and the good were going around saying, you're moaning about whipping, it's what they do. But the suggestion that it was a form of blackmail that has got Mr. Ragg a meeting with the Metropolitan Police, that does tend to move it into a slightly more precarious area, does it not?
Yes, it does. And I've never really heard of whipping done in this way. I mean, Christian Wakeford talks about withdrawing funding from one of his local schools. And specific threats like that are a bit unusual. I mean, in the old days, whips would use physical violence, but they don't do that any longer. Nowadays, they're a kind of cross between school prefects and MI5, and their job is to enforce discipline and then collect intelligence. But the kind of things that they normally do to put pressure on MPs will be to say that if you don't toe the line, we'll send you into a broom cupboard for your next office, because that's the whips have the right to allocate that. Or they won't get that great little fact-finding trip to Barbados. Instead, they'll be campaigning up in Bradford instead. Those are the kind of pressures that are usually exerted. And then it's the persuasion thing. It's things like, look, we've helped you out getting money for your local patch, and this is the way you repay us by voting against us. And so they try and appeal to their good nature. The idea of actually blackmailing them, which would be a criminal offence, is something new. And if that does turn out to be true, then it just shows the desperation of Number 10.
Yeah. The final point, Nigel, and again, we talked about this at the end of last week, I think it was, when Lord Adonis had said, if Boris goes, Brexit goes, and Adonis is not a stupid man, but he's not quite the same frontline status as Michael Heseltine. When Heseltine says it, does that not let the cat out of the bag? And does Heseltine not join the ranks of the amateur rebels, as it were?
I don't think that Brexit really comes into it. That there's a wide acceptance now, even among sort of former Remainers like myself. Brexit is effectively done and dusted. We're not going to rejoin the EU. Certainly, that is not Labour's policy. Should they be elected, they would carry on with Brexit. So I don't think that is the key issue. The key issue about Boris Johnson's premiership is that most Tory MPs don't think he's up to the job. And what they want to do is get a leader in who is up to the job.
Nigel, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Nigel Nelson there, the political editor of the Sunday Mirror and the Sunday People. Boris Johnson, it is time up, but not necessarily this week. Watch this space with interest. Now, last week on the show, we spoke to the brilliant actor Tommy Jessup. Tommy has Down syndrome, and he had a message for everyone, and that message was that everyone has a gift inside themselves. Well, one person who certainly has found his gift is my very, very dear friend, Tom Yendle. Tom was born in 1962 without arms or hands due to a drug prescribed to his mum during pregnancy. Yes, thalidomide. Tom grew up using his mouth, feet and chin to do everyday tasks. And lo and behold, as you can see there, now he is a brilliant artist. And I'm delighted to welcome him on the show. Hello, how are you?
Oh, I'm very good, thank you.
Good. I'm going to talk a little bit about the art and various other things as well, but we got to know each other initially through Lord Mayor Treloar College. But before you got to the college, what was it like growing up as a child, suffering those side effects of that drug?
It wasn't good, really, because I went to a normal primary school and they didn't really know how to cope with me. So I failed a bit there. And then my parents fought for me to go to another school, which was a boarding school, but it was for able-bodied kids. And again, the teachers didn't really know, how to push me and get the best out of me. So it wasn't really until I went to Treloar School in Hampshire when I really, thrived. And my mother always tells the story about when we first went to go and visit Treloar's, just to see whether we liked it. And I was sitting in the back of the car on the way home. And I remember her saying, well, of course, that's not the place for Tom. I saw a boy smoking and I heard one swearing. And now my mother, who's 100 this week, looks back and says it was the making of me, because they made me the independent person that I am.
I mean, I know the story and I've read your autobiography, which is quite brilliant as well, but some might say, and that's where it ended, and Tom went off you went on to university and you studied there and met your lovely wife and married and have kids and the rest of it. I mean, Treloar, let's give it a final plug. It is a specialist college for young folk who have those challenges, but goodness me, it's an inspirational place.
It is, and it is a very different place from when I went there. I think 80% of the students now, or over 80%, don't have any vocal communication. 100% are in wheelchairs, and that just comes, I think, down to the way that society, medical science especially, has saved a lot more kids with more severe disability. But then, I should say more kids with uniqueness, because I don't like the word disability.
Well, you always tell me that it's not disability, it's different abilities.
Absolutely. I mean, just because I do things with my mouth and my feet and my chin doesn't make me have a disability. In fact, I've done a lot more things than most able-bodied people have done. I mean, the average person, I don't think, has been skiing or been a qualified scuba diver, or drives a car or rides a horse or travels on their own. That's important to me, is that in life you should try lots of things. And that's why my biography is In Life, Try Everything, and Here for a Purpose.
The other thing that I like, and the two examples of it, is you're an internationalist, so you work with kids in Ghana to develop their skills and running the cafe and stuff like that, but also with the foot and mouth painting, you're part of a global movement on that. Tell me a little bit about Ghana first.
I'm just about to go, and I am so excited because just before Christmas, I got to know of a little baby 7-month-old girl who's been born with no arms, and she's in an orphanage in Accra. And I'm so excited that I think that I'm going to be able to change this young girl's life. So I've been going to Ghana for 15 years, and originally started helping a small charity called Teabag, the Education and Book Appeal for Ghana. We put kids through school in Ghana. But I saw there was a need for the next stage. So I put my efforts into building a vocational skills college out there. And I go every winter. I go to get out of the winter, really. But I've also found a mouth and foot painting artist there, Joel Achempong, who's an amazing artist. And it's a really important part of my life, because it really shows you that life isn't about having the big car on the drive or the biggest flat screen on your TV. It's what you do with your life and how it affects people, not just in your local community, but in the world as a whole. And after all, we are one world, aren't we?
Absolutely right. And is that what encouraged you to get involved with the global movement of foot and mouth painters? Or and did you discover things by being involved with that you perhaps didn't know as a Brit, as a UK citizen?
No, not really. I got involved with the mouth and foot painting artist because my auntie used to live next to a mouth painter called Peter Spencer. And he kept on saying, when he heard that I'd been born with no arms, he kept on saying to my parents and writing cards and saying, encourage Tom to paint, encourage Tom to paint. And in 1965, the Lord Mayor of London had an exhibition in the Mansion House in London to raise money for the thalidomide generation. And in his biography, it tells about little Tommy Yendle at the age of 3 doing somersaults across the floor. And so I've always known about the mouth and foot painters, and I think it was just a natural progression. I wasn't that academic at school, but I had an amazing art teachers at Trelawn's, Alan Wilde and Jill Goff, and they inspired me to be an artist. And, our founder of the mouth and foot painters, Erich Stegmann, who was a German artist just after the Second World War, his favourite saying was, art is in your heart and your head. It doesn't matter with what part of your anatomy you hold your paintbrush, whether it's in your hand or your mouth or your foot. If you've got a talent, it will come out onto the canvas or onto the paper. And so I think it was fate. And with the mouth and foot painters, is, as you say, is 800 artists in 80 countries around the world, and they're all earning a living through painting and producing cards and wrapping paper and books. And and you start as a student and you work your way up like any other company. You work your way up the ladder, and I'm very lucky now to sit on the international board.
Tom, great to talk to you. Have a safe and successful trip to Ghana. Give my love to the family and look forward to seeing you very, very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
The programme is called Alastair Stewart and Friends, and that's one I wanted to do for quite some time. Tom Yendle, a tremendous friend of mine, hugely talented mouth and foot painter, but even more importantly, like Tommy, an advocate of asking all of us to see people who have different challenges to those that we face in a different light. And as you notice with Tom, there literally is no limit to what the man can do. Extraordinary. Don't forget that later on in the show, I'll be dedicating time to your opinions and your stories on whether you think the Prime Minister Boris Johnson is on the ropes or fighting back. And if you haven't already emailed your thoughts, do so, please. Or you can even send a video if you want to. All of it to gbviews@gbnews.uk. And you can get in touch via Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. We've plenty more still to come as we inch past 23 minutes past 1 here on Alastair Stewart and Friends. After the break, Britain's high street pharmacists can now refer overweight customers to the NHS's free online service. I'll be talking to a nutritionist and well-being expert about how to get our health and bodies back on track post-COVID. Do stay with us.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking mostly dry, although there will be some patchy rain across western and northern Scotland. Let's take a look at the details. Zooming into the southwest, and although it will be dry, there will be a good deal of cloud around this afternoon. Best of the brightness will be across Dorset and Somerset. Moving east towards the southeast England and East Anglia, again it will be dry, but with plenty of cloud around. The cloud will then thin, especially across East Anglia. There could be the odd spot of drizzle across northwest Wales. Otherwise, the rest of Wales and the Midlands will be dry with a few sunny spells. Northwest England will also be rather cloudy today, with the best of any sunshine across Cumbria and Lancashire. Most will be dry, but some drizzle is possible perhaps across the Pennines. Temperatures will reach 8 degrees Celsius. Moving across the Pennines, and it should be much brighter across northeast England, with more in the way of sunshine. In the sunshine and light winds, temperatures will reach 10 degrees Celsius. Into Scotland, and for many it will be cloudy with some rain, especially in the north and west. It will be breezy across northern areas, but milder with highs of 11 Celsius. Northern Ireland will see a mix of cloud and sunny spells, with perhaps the odd spot of drizzle across the higher ground. Highs here will reach 9 or 10 Celsius. Heading into this evening, and we see little change, with the rather cloudy but largely dry weather continuing, and that is the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's a little after 27 minutes past 1, and you are watching, and I hope listening, to Alastair Stewart and Friends on GB News television and radio. Now, high street pharmacists in England can now refer customers to a free online NHS service to get in shape. The app offers support and weight loss tips, taking just 12 weeks to complete. Now, it's no surprise that they're taking action, as a huge 1 in 4 adults in Britain is now classified as obese. The pandemic definitely helped boost those numbers as well, with lockdown gain averaging, I'm told, around half a stone, as millions reached for comfort food in times of crisis. Now, we know from research that obesity significantly increases the chances of becoming seriously ill from coronavirus and a whole range of other ailments. But what happened to all of the good intentions when we first got forced into lockdown? And how can lifestyle changes help us get back to where we should be? It's a real pleasure to be joined now by nutritionist and well-being expert, good friend of the programme, Monica Price. Monica, great to see you. With so many free health plans available online, do you think this NHS one will make a real difference?
Yes, hi Alistair, lovely to be on your show. Yes, I think this one is part of a kind of the NHS long-term plan, Alistair, and what they're trying to do with this, it's called the NHS Digital Management System, and what people will do, anybody with a BMI, which is currently the way that we measure ourselves in the UK, so that we know whether we're obese or healthy weight or overweight, so anybody with a BMI of 30 or over is going to be referred to by the pharmacist. So people will be able to go into their pharmacist, have a chat with them, as a lot of people now do, Alistair, as you probably are aware, because pharmacists, you know, they're very helpful, they're very supportive, and they do a lot more than just dispense medicine. So
absolutely. No, I mean, I butt it. No, only to agree with you and to add it, because I think what we're talking about is a bit of a revolution here, because it's underlining all of those brilliant things that pharmacists have now learnt to do and are willingly doing, not least because of the coronavirus, but also the fact that the NHS realised that if we can help ourselves to lose weight and get fit, will cost the NHS a lot less as patients. It's brilliant.
Exactly. It is. It's such a fact. It's about time, to be honest. It's about time that they've been, you know, they knew already that the pharmacists were always there, always supporting, always helping. Now people can go to them and they will be referred to this program. And what I've learned about this program, Alistair, is that when you actually allowed to sign on, you go to the website or you download the app, and then what you'll do, you'll have a list of providers. So it's not just one provider, there's a whole list of providers that you choose. So in other words, you're able to make that choice yourself personally, which again, I think is a good thing. And that will be, depending on just lots of people's ways. Some people don't like to exercise, for example, but some people prefer just to go walking, but they don't like to go in a gym. So there's lots of different programs, and the whole idea is to support that person to try and lose weight. Because as you said, we are in almost an epidemic now, Alistair, and the COVID-19 has certainly accentuated that, because so many of us now are ordering food online, having food delivered. So it's become so easy. And of course, with that, it becomes a risk of us getting lazy. And unfortunately, that's where sometimes we can fall down.
Absolutely. And also the dangers of working from home and the proximity of the larder or the fridge. It's all too easy. On the upside, we were chatting amongst the team when we all said we wanted to do this item and talk to you about it, is a lot of folks said, well, during the lockdown, I went out for walks more often, whether with the dog or just on my own. Went out to get some more fresh air. I was out and about, and I learnt to spend more time positively with my family rather than just having rows and what have you. On the well-being side, how do we make sure that some of that good stuff up here sticks?
Yeah. And again, I think get outside. I'm a great advocate, Alistair, to go outside. If you can get outside, the British Heart Foundation recommends you have at least 30 minutes exercise outside. And again, you don't have to run if you're not able to run. A walk is just as good. But 30 minutes exercise, even when it's cold, as it is at the moment, and it's going to continue to be probably, it just makes you feel so much better. So it's all about well-being. Well-being and nutrition actually go very much hand in hand. And of course, we have, as you know, a rising increase in, especially in our young, of mental health issues. And, you know, at the moment, they're not getting the support that they should have because everyone's so busy, of course, with COVID-19. But the flip side of that is that, you know, we need to do things ourselves. So if there's something that you enjoy, I would highly recommend that you do it. Be that, you know, just running or, you know, joining a gym if that's something you like to do, joining a dance class, going on a walking group, a rambling group. These are the sorts of things that really, really help you. And, you know, just make that good choices. It's so difficult, and I know that, especially at this time of the year. But you need to think new year, new start, and look at actually how much benefit you can do to your health.
Brilliant advice, all of it. Monica Price, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed for finding time for us this Saturday afternoon. That's Monica Price, nutritionist and wellness expert. Well worth following and reading her stuff as well. You're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends. We've plenty more still to come this afternoon, including we'll be getting more of your thoughts on today's big question. Is it time out or time up for Boris Johnson? And we'll also be sharing my take. But first, let's bring you up to date with all of the latest news headlines. Here's Simon Pusey.
Thanks, Alistair. It's 1:33. I am Simon Pusey in the GB newsroom. Police will meet a senior Conservative backbencher to discuss allegations of blackmail and intimidation. William Bragg has accused Downing Street of bullying and claims Tory whips have threatened to remove public funds from the constituencies of MPs trying to oust the Prime Minister. He'll speak to a Met detective next week, which means police could potentially open an investigation. The UK is taking steps to ease tensions between Russia and Ukraine. The Defence Secretary Ben Wallace will head to Moscow to speak to his Russian counterpart after the UK's invitation to discuss security was accepted. It comes after Downing Street warned Russia would be punished if the country pushes ahead with any destabilising action. US police say a British astrophysicist who was fatally shot in Georgia was killed by a stray bullet last Sunday. Mr. Matthew Wilson, who was visiting family, was lying in bed when he was hit. Police say his death appears to be the result of a gun's reckless discharge. The majority of Ireland's coronavirus restrictions have now been lifted. COVID passes are no longer required for entry to hospitality and entertainment venues, and live events can return to full capacity. An 8 p.m. curfew on the hospitality sector has also now been removed. TV, online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Alastair Stewart and Friends.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. You're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends here on GB News, television and radio. As you know by now, our main theme has been Boris Johnson, time out or time up. And I'm delighted to be joined now here in the studio by Joanne Nadler, Conservative and political commentator for Her Thoughts. Great to see you again. Our paths have crossed in the past, so
Indeed.
You've been at the pounding heart of what this is all about. In your view, time up or time out?
Well, I'm afraid I'm going to sound frustratingly ambivalent because I think, if all things were equal, time would definitely be up for Boris Johnson. I mean, I think he's broken too many rules. He's clearly been dishonest and people are rightfully very angry with him. But it's a little bit more complicated than that, isn't it? Because people in the Conservative Party are sort of part of a family in a sense. And I think they feel this week, or my sense is, that there's a sense that some of the actions taken against Boris Johnson put the actual future success of the Conservative Party in jeopardy, more than just Boris Johnson, but the whole of the party. And so what you've sensed is that people coalescing around the centre again.
I think that's absolutely on the money because, as I said in my overall introduction to the programme an hour and a half ago, any objective appraisal of what he is accused of doing, what he's admitted to doing in the past, would be a slam dunk. But you can never, ever forget that it's Boris Johnson. And that's what Fraser Nelson wrote in The Telegraph yesterday. There is something absolutely magical about this guy's impact. And whenever I go on Twitter and say, we're going to be talking about whether he's in or out, overwhelmingly, people come through and say, hands off, he's our bloke. Has he still got that to trade on?
Well, I don't think we should overstate it. I mean, I think his position is very, very perilous. And to a certain extent, the number 10 operation, insofar as there is an operation, and that's been a lot of the problem, but they've been putting a lot of emphasis on let's wait and see what's in this grey report. And I think that has been on a hope and a prayer that in the meantime, they're going to be able to sort of mount a successful defence. Now, they were part of the way towards doing that last week when we saw these actions taken, as I say, by Christian Wakeford and I think by David Davis, who got the tone of his intervention.
Christian's the one who defected from the Conservative Party and joined Labour.
Yes, indeed. And I think they were getting towards a point where they were looking at how they could relaunch Boris Johnson, as it were, and we felt that he had a bit more bravura at PMQs for what that's worth. But I think there was also a hope that in the meantime MPs would stop and think about what they might be about to unleash. And that is another one of these high drama Tory internecine warfares that we've seen so many times over the years in terms of a leadership election. Now, this one would be whilst the party is in power with not some inconsiderable things that it should be able to claim some success over, the rollout of the vaccine, the fact that we now have one of the most open economies in Europe, and some considerable economic success. So, I mean, it's a complicated picture.
The other thing which plays crucially to it, and as a consultant you will know this very well indeed, is that the quality of your opposition matters. And whether you're talking to Conor Burns earlier on or Henry Hill from Conservative Home, in terms of coup, it was more a kind of blueprint for amateurism than it was a real guaranteed Machiavellian fatal plot. It was a cock-up.
Do you mean the crossing of the floor, as it were? Yeah.
But also, we've got all of these letters and then we're withdrawing our letters and, well, maybe we'll just wait for a little while longer. It wasn't exactly precise.
Well, I think that's inevitably the case because you don't know how many letters Graham Brady has. He's extremely sensible in keeping that absolutely to himself. And his reputation in that regard is faultless. But we've seen over the years, if you think about the number of times that people moved against Theresa May, and there was this sense in which, the momentum was about to strike. And then when it did, of course, she was extremely swift in saying, OK, right, let's have that vote of no confidence. And they did it within 36 hours, I think. And she was able to, the momentum was on her side in that moment.
As a consultant, again, what do you make then of an intelligent viewing of today's newspapers, where you've got unattributable, but also attributable in some cases to John Redwood, the idea of saying, look, drop the rise in national insurance in April, or postpone it, because Kwasi Kwarteng is saying, look, hang on, go ahead with it because we need the money for the NHS. A groundswell there. And also other sources saying, you're throwing away the golden goose with Plan B having been lifted. Big it up, big it up. I mean, they are still, even this morning, fighting back.
No, I think that's right. And I think it's very interesting to see that when Boris Johnson started to be on the ropes before Christmas, largely of his own making, sort of a sensible policy agenda started to be advanced because he was more open to it. Up until that point, there's been a sense in which he's very much been captured by the hawks on lockdown. And suddenly there was a kind of retaliatory voice which he was able really to go along with. And that seems to be, I think, be what's happening here as well. I think there's a very strong sense that dropping the national insurance increase would be a very sensible policy, because a lot of us have felt for some time that Boris Johnson has not been advancing a suitably conservative agenda. So over and above the fact that he doesn't seem to be able to run an operation, he also hasn't had an agenda that's persuasive and convincing to those MPs that he brought in on the so-called blue wall. He needs to give them something that they can actually sell to their constituents.
Absolutely fascinating, because again, we both, as many folk listening to our conversation, cast your mind back to the Dave Cameron days and the hugger hoodie and embracing green and being pictured with huskies and the big society, which is one I particularly, personally liked and supported. When the party didn't like it, Dave just backed off. Boris Johnson doesn't seem to be one who's willing to back off.
Well, I think, it's difficult comparing different men, but I think, at heart, David Cameron, for all his kind of interest in modernising the Conservative Party, was a fairly sort of traditional Conservative, and he was running a fiscally sound economic policy. And for the main part, he was considered to have run a very effective and authoritative government. The problem with Boris Johnson is that, and his government, is it seems, obviously, people will accept that nobody was anticipating COVID and that was a crisis and had to be dealt with in its own way. But it just doesn't seem to be very competent. The government is not coming across as competent. And that's ultimately, I think, what did for John Major. Regardless all the scandals, ultimately people felt that this was not a government that knew what it wanted to do or knew how to do it.
Yeah. Do you think that Heseltine has let the real cat out of the bag? Adonis nodded to it about a week ago. Get rid of Boris, you get rid of Brexit. Because if you look at a number of the objectors, the rebels, those who are simply unhappy, they are on the other side of the Brexit debate to where Boris Johnson is.
I think that's actually been extremely fortuitous for those people who want to keep Boris in place, because they're able to then present
anything Heseltine likes, I don't like.
Well, yeah, I mean,
there's a big group within the party who feel that way.
That's a crude way of putting it, but not wrong, really. I mean, the more subtle take on that is that it's allowed Johnson's operation, and apparently this is what they're engaged with this weekend as well, to really focus people's minds on the point I made when we started talking, which was Conservative MPs and Conservative members feeling, well, hang on a second, if we get rid of Johnson, are we junking the whole project? Are we putting the whole project in danger? And I've had a number of people say to me this week, they're really concerned now about what will happen with Brexit. And I think that's concentrated people's minds. And, ironically, I think that could keep him in place.
It's the old adage, as I put it to Connor and Henry, when we elected him, we knew he was a wrong 'un, but he's our wrong 'un. He's on our side. Intrigued to know, and from my team that I wanted to ask you this question, is the role of Carrie in all of this, who is accused by enemies of Boris Johnson as pulling too many strings, bringing too much of the green environmental agenda into it. And I read in the papers, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but it's reported that she's had to say to Sir Linton Crosby, if you come back to work for Boris Johnson, I won't interfere this time, I'll let you get on with the job. Is that true, or is it sexism?
Well, I mean, it rings true. I mean, nobody can actually know what goes on inside somebody else's marriage. But it's certainly hardly controversial to say that Carrie Johnson was associated with environmental concerns. And then as the couple got closer, Boris Johnson seemed to take up this agenda. So I don't think it's either sexist or indeed Machiavellian to infer that there's some kind of connection there. And on to your point about Linton Crosby coming back in, I mean, I think that's also fairly widely known, certainly in Westminster circles, that there was a sense that there were two lots of operations, certainly in Boris Johnson's leadership campaign and then later in the election campaign, in terms of, you know, who was influencing Boris Johnson, and if the professionals felt that there was a separate briefing operation going on, then you only have to look at the newspapers to see the kind of stories that were around and about to suggest that may have come from sources close to the Prime Minister's wife, let's put it that way.
Yeah, fascinating. We've got about a minute left, so I began by asking you time out or time up. There is a strong feeling that I've detected in all of my conversations this morning that it might not be now, but it may be after the May elections. So has he got time between now and May, in your view, as an objective analyst of these things, to sufficiently repair the brand, to sufficiently make those policy moves and measures like tax and spending to save the day?
I think when Boris Johnson performs at the top of his game, and if he gets the right people around him, potentially, yes. Yes, he could do that. But that is absolutely what he does have to do. So there's been a question mark about whether he's had the vigour, the intent, whether he even really wants to do that. I think that's been one of the things worrying Conservative MPs. He showed a little bit of a glimmer of his old self at PMQs last week.
Yeah.
And in many ways, it was rather remarkable that Keir Starmer, who also was, I think, you know, performing reasonably well, wasn't able to make more of an impact. So, yes, I think given that time, he could do it. Will he do it? That's another question, but he could do it.
Brilliant. For your insights, Joanne Nadler, thank you very much indeed, and for your time. Great to see you again.
My
and
pleasure.
Thank you. That was Joanne Nadler, Conservative and political commentator, with her views. He could, he should, will he? Watch this space. Intriguing insights from the front line there. So what about the whole programme as we inch towards 10 to 2? Our conversation began with Conor Burns, Conservative Member of Parliament for Bournemouth West, Minister of State in the Northern Ireland office, but much more important than either of those, supporter of the Prime Minister. On the whipping exercise, he had this to say.
It is no secret that the government whips of all governments over decades have sought to persuade members of Parliament who have concerns to back the government's legislative agenda. That's in the nature of how Parliament works. But I can tell you, Alistair, based on my experience of 12 years now as a Member of Parliament, serving as a PPS in, I think, 5 different government departments, having pitched and persuaded and campaigned for resources to come to my own constituency for new schools, for coastal community funding to improve the peer approach area of my Bournemouth West constituency, that the processes that you go through to get these funds allocated to you are absolutely rigorous. They're applied impartially. Civil servants oversee them. So the idea for a second that the whips or anybody else in government would have the power or the ability to withhold funding from an individual's constituency when they made a legitimate case for need is just simply wrong.
Next up, Henry Hill, news editor at Conservative Home, who quite clearly does not support Boris Johnson. However, he recognises the Prime Minister's past successes.
Actually up in part of the Red Wall, and I was talking to councillors who owed their positions to the political revolution that Boris Johnson had driven. You know, I was up in Rotherham, where the Conservatives went from 0 to 20 councillors in one election because of that amazing redrawing of the political map that Boris Johnson personally pulled off. And it's not really my view that I'm giving you so much as like the feedback they were getting from their voters on the doorstep. So I do think this is actually cut through.
So Henry Hill there from Conservative Home. Are we going to do emails now? We are. Fine. Thank you. These come in to me, you see, on bits of paper, so it's not always exactly what's up there. And let us start, if we can, with Ken. Looking at the Tory backbenchers during the last couple of PMQs, the body language of the majority of 300 suggests that their support is distinctly chilly. Maggie tweets, they know at least as much as we do about what's gone on. Probably more. I realise they might want to wait for the report, if only to make it look like they're being fair. But surely they know what he is and have already decided it's a no-brainer, even for the brainless. Tracy, also on Twitter, Boris Johnson's not going anywhere except number 10. I back Boris. He got Brexit done, he got the COVID vaccinations programme going, he survived COVID, he won by a massive majority in 2019. The 2019 intake won't get voted again if they send in letters of no confidence. Viv, I speak to many people on social media and in the real world, and they are still supportive of Boris. They don't like the media deciding who we have as Prime Minister. John, via email, from the start of Boris Johnson becoming Prime Minister, the left-wing press and EU lovers have been trying to oust him from office. If they succeed, Brexit is gone. Carla, still on emails. Our Prime Minister's doing a fantastic job. Yes, he may have made some mistakes, but who hasn't? I support Boris, but if they get rid of him, I will never vote Conservative again. So many, and thank you very much indeed for those that I didn't have time for, because it's now time quickly for my take. There's a scene in Daniel Craig's version of Casino Royale where, having lost nearly everything, he borrows more money from the CIA's Felix Leiter and goes into a winner-takes-all hand with the villain, and inevitably he wins. But that's James Bond. This is Boris Johnson. Reeling from accusations of misleading Parliament over parties, changing his version of events more time than many can remember, and facing open rebellion from his own side, albeit not terribly well done, he now faces that final hand, which is about to be dealt by Sue Gray, the senior civil servant investigating it all, whose report is due next week. Today we've asked, is it time out or time up? If Gray's report is damning and finds him transparently guilty of having misled Parliament, it's almost certainly time up rather than time out. But no one knows yet what Ms Gray is going to say. If there's a glimmer of light in it for the Prime Minister, then it is most certainly time out and game on. His friend and supporter Conor Burns told me he is the Tories' best hope, a man who's made all the right calls on the big policy issues, from Brexit to COVID. Others have argued that this time he's gone too far, and it is time up. I genuinely don't know. But what is clear is that he still has the fight in him, as Joanne just said, to go all 15 rounds. What's more, the impact of scrapping Plan B and heading rapidly to a full lifting of all COVID restrictions is only just beginning to drip into the political consciousness of the population. Hints, too, that we've discussed, that unpopular measures such as tax and national insurance increases may be dropped or postponed, could also change the balance. Given that there's no clear successor, all Tories can unite around, even though Chancellor Rishi Sunak is the clear favourite, plays into Boris Johnson's hand. Finally, suggestions that the malcontents are settling old grudges, and given Lords Heseltine and Adonis have perhaps let their cat out of the bag, if Boris goes, Brexit goes, will rally many in the Conservative Party, as you've heard this morning. So it's a finely balanced call. And until Sue Gray deals those cards, it's impossible to call. If I had to bet, I'd say it's time out. But I also think very, very strongly that we will renew this conversation, particularly after those elections in May. But all in all, no one knows. And anyone who tells you that they do could very well lose their shirt. So don't join them in being bare-chested and chilly this winter. That's all we have time for. Back at noon tomorrow. Hope you have a great afternoon. Until then, a very goodbye to you.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking mostly dry, although there will be some patchy rain across western and northern Scotland. Let's take a look at the details. Zooming into the southwest, and although it will be dry, there will be a good deal of cloud around this afternoon. Best of the brightness will be across Dorset and Somerset. Moving east towards the southeast England and East Anglia, again it will be dry, but with plenty of cloud around. The cloud will thin, especially across East Anglia. There could be the odd spot of drizzle across northwest Wales. Otherwise, the rest of Wales and the Midlands will be dry with a few sunny spells. Northwest England will also be rather cloudy today, with the best of any sunshine across Cumbria and Lancashire. Most will be dry, but some drizzle is possible perhaps across the Pennines. Temperatures will reach 8 degrees Celsius. Moving across the Pennines, and it should be much brighter across northeast England, with more in the way of sunshine. In the sunshine and light winds, temperatures will reach 10 degrees Celsius. Into Scotland, and for many it will be cloudy with some rain, especially in the north and west. It will be breezy across northern areas, but milder with highs of 11 Celsius. Northern Ireland will see a mix of cloud and sunny spells, with perhaps the odd spot of drizzle across the higher ground. Highs here will reach 9 or 10 Celsius. Heading into this evening, and we see little change, with the rather cloudy but largely dry weather continuing, and that is the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way.